Hi, and welcome to Random Rogers Big Picture for the week of July. I guess it's July 29th we're coming on. Video is back this week by unpopular demand. Two items on the agenda. One is there's a particular question that came up regarding diversification with Australia and New Zealand, and the other one, question that came up on the blog that I interpreted the question one way. The reader didn't really have that in mind, but I think the point might be worthwhile, and since it's in the comments, I don't know if anybody actually reads the comment section or not. But sometimes comments get left, and I do try to answer a good many of them. Some of them don't need an answer, which is fine. But anyway, that being said, question came up. It looks like, this is part of a question, Australia and New Zealand are really taking a pounding in spite of the fact that their dairy industry will continue to bring record profits from sales to Southeast Asia. Any thoughts on that? Okay. Yeah, the first thought, and maybe the only thought, is whatever the fundamental story is for a lot of these other countries that are going down in sympathy. I had thought of this, but I can't take credit because I saw it on the Black Swan Currency Report, that there's like a little mini contagion that started here in the U.S. But there's a detachment, or disconnect is a better word, between fundamentals and what's going on in the market right now. One of the things that's hurting Australia, just to give you an idea, is, okay, we know about the Bear Stearns hedge fund here in the U.S., and are there other hedge funds? Maybe you've read about other hedge funds. There's all sorts of liquidity issues. Well, it turns out in Australia, there's, I believe it's 100 hedge funds. And so if there's going to be problems here with our hedge funds, then it's only obvious that there are going to be problems in Australia caused by the Australian hedge funds. It's only obvious. The only problem is that the hedge funds there's like 100 of them, and pretty much none of them, or close to none, do the type of mortgage derivative stuff that the Bear Stearns funds did. It turns out just about all the hedge funds in Australia are just long-short equity. There's no fundamental connection. Now, there is a housing problem, but the dynamics of that market are just a whole lot different locally than they are here. The question of whether housing is overheated or not, credit never got so easy as it is here. It got kind of easy in terms of standards. But here you had a combination of practically no standards along with dirt cheap money. So there's very little, the way I see it, and I could be wrong about this, but the way I see it, there's really not much fundamental connection. The fact that there is, pretend for a second I'm right about that, there is no fundamental connection, then when the panic is over, whatever it was that made Australia and to a lesser extent New Zealand a positive investment destination, will start to work again. Both countries are at a different point in their economic cycle. I will say that New Zealand does have more risks. They have less commodities than Australia, one thing to point out. Because the country is so small, they just have to bring in more stuff, and so that's their current account problem is always going to appear to be ugly. And so you need to know that going in, that if you're going to have exposure to that part of the world, it makes sense to favor Australia in terms of weighting compared to New Zealand. So more Australia, less New Zealand. But New Zealand itself can be a fine destination, but I want to make that distinction. And this is going on with a lot of other countries. Ireland, there may be mortgage problems there. Well, there's again an excited housing market. It's just not the same kind of derivative issue. It's just different, but that market's been getting pounded. When the panic is over, whenever that is, that we're currently going through, a lot of these countries, I think, will turn around. I think they're just selling down more on emotion as opposed to fundamentals, and we'll see if that turns out to be right or not. Next issue, portfolio perspective. Someone left a question asking about the double short funds. It's a good question about why own something that's always going down? And what I thought he was asking, and then based on his follow-up, or saying, what I thought he was saying, but then based on his follow-up, I don't think he was. But a lot of people do this, is they have a portfolio of whatever, stocks, funds, some combination, whatever, and something will be down within the portfolio, and that will be troublesome to them, and that really is the wrong way to look at it. The portfolio needs to do whatever it is you need it to do. Within that portfolio, there should be a mix of all sorts of things that are going up and down and flat, and that blend together is what gives you the return. As a matter of philosophy, I think if you got everything going up in an up market, you're going to have problems when there's a down market. And so basically, in owning a double short fund, and again, this may be the wrong thing for everybody to own, but in owning something like a double short fund or something like gold or lately treasuries, you give yourself a chance of owning things that'll go up when the market goes down. That has been less true of gold lately, and maybe there's some long-term dynamic that is in fact changing. We'll have to see how that goes. But some of the commodity stuff does do that on different days. But at all times, you probably should have some stuff going up and some stuff going down. It's getting the mix right that matters. For example, if you buy into the fact of gold having a low correlation, let's pretend for a second that that isn't in question. If you've got, this is the example I used on the site, if you've got all of the miners going down while the market's going up, and you own it as a counter strategy to the market, well, then being upset about it being down when it is down in that scenario makes no sense. I think you're looking at the wrong thing in that instance. Hopefully I'm saying that in a way that makes sense. Well, based on the YouTube limitations, looks like we're out of time. Have a great weekend and enjoy the very end of that really fouled up, or FUBAR, that's a better one, FUBAR Tour de France. Bye-bye.